All right, we are live. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I am Joy Gerswald. I'm the programs director for Conservative Ladies of America. And we are here for our regular Parent Power Hour for the month of August. We try to have a live for you the fourth Wednesday. I don't know what day it is of the month, and bring you real information, empowerment, resources, tools to help make your homeschool adventure a full and lively success. This evening, we are joined by Kevin Boden. Kevin has been a guest with us before. He brings a lot of experience as a homeschool dad. He is a veteran, so he has met that family challenge, being a military family, and he is a homeschool advocate and a legal advocate for homeschool families with HSLDA, the Homeschool Defense Association. He's going to speak with me about what we do as we kick off school. Just out east, a lot are already school, may have did their homes for the year. Out here on the coast, we just getting ready to get started. So I turn the floor to Kevin, and he talk about all of the things you've got to make sure it start off your year. So away you go, Kevin. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Joy. Yeah, hey everybody. It's great to be here, and I think the timing is indeed perfect. HSLDA is a national organization focused on homeschool advocacy and freedom, and we are at the phase of the year when lots of families are moving into the homeschool space. For some, this is a routine part of their year where they file a notice and they get prepped and they find their curriculum and their materials. And for some, it's a new step, and there's some trepidation and often some, just kind of inherent fear of, can I do this, and what are the proper steps to take, and what are the requirements, and do I have to teach certain subjects, and what subjects are those? And so really a timely topic that the team has chosen here. I'm going to spend a few minutes explaining a little bit about the requirements under the law, and then we'll talk some specifics on really why those requirements are important. And I've got lots of stories that I could tell, and I'll just share a few of those just to highlight the significance of this. And so, if there's generally two kinds of states. There's states where you have to tell the government something, whether that's through a notice of intent, maybe one time or annually, or maybe you don't have to tell the government anything about what you're doing. But in those states where you have to file a notice of intent, sometimes it's called a declaration, sometimes it's called an affidavit, whatever the name for it is, the basic requirement is you have to notify the government of something that you're doing in compliance with whatever the statute is. So in Washington, the Revised Code of Washington has particular requirements that you have to put on your declaration of intent. Of course, you got to file that by mid-September. So if you're in Washington State, now's the time. You've got about 2 weeks left before you are out of compliance with the law. And let me just take this time to make a comment. Sometimes we do get calls from folks and they don't like the law. They don't think that they should have to provide, whatever the required information is under the law. And, we get that. I don't necessarily think that I should have to tell the government certain information either. And so one of the things that we do at HSLDA in partnership with groups like Conservative Ladies of America is work to change the laws that we think could be made better and less onerous for families. And so if you live in a state where you have to give the government some information, like in the Declaration of Intent, even though you don't like it, there is still a requirement that you do so. And so we would, certainly advise families to follow the law. That would go for, of course, if you're in a state where they have subject matter requirements, know what those are so that you can comply with those. Some states have hours requirements per day. Some states have hours requirements annually. Some states don't list it by hour. They list it by days requirement, 172 days in a year or 180 days in a year. So just figure out whatever state you're in. And of course, you can go to hslda.org, go to our legal section, click on the state map, and we give a brief overview for free of every state in the country. So fill that out. The other thing I'll say with respect to these declarations of intent or notices or affidavits is you don't need to provide any additional information. And so sometimes we will see a superintendent, a district, a school, what have you, generate a form for the homeschool community. They call it the same thing, declaration of intent. And it's not uncommon for those forms to include as information that's requested, information that's not required by law. And so, for example, if you're in a state where there's no requirement to put a birthday, then you don't need to list your child's birthday. If you're in a state where you have to list the birthday, but you don't have to put the grade, there's no need to put the grade on there. So just because there are certain requirements, or maybe even the superintendent or the district asks you for, that doesn't mean that you then need to provide all the requested information unless it's required by law. And a lot of what we do at HSLDA, particularly this time of year, is, hey, I got a call from the superintendent, or I got a letter, I got a notice, I got a link to an email with an online form. They're requiring X, Y, or Z, and we don't think that some of this information is required. What should I do? And so we work through these issues. We advise families on how to comply with the law, but not volunteer information that may not be required, even though the district or the school may be requesting it. So the admonition is, of course, very simple, which is know what the law is and then comply with it. Of course, there's lots of nuances there that that come into play in terms of how to do that, or concerns that you might have in the way that it's going about. So hopefully the declarations of intent are very clear. The notices of intent are very clear. There are other particular requirements in Washington that you ought to be aware of, such as certain qualifications that you have to meet in order to be a home educator. And there's some options that you have to meet those qualifications. I work at HSLDA, which is in Northern Virginia. I live in West Virginia, and one of the qualifications we have to homeschool is a high school diploma. And so when we moved to the state, we had to dig out our high school diplomas. I mean, when you're over 40 years old, it's not too frequently, that you're asked to provide your high school diploma for any reason, really. But for some reason, that's what qualified us here to be able to teach our kids. And so we complied with the law. And again, even though I think it's kind of silly, I think it's frankly really silly that as a college graduate and a bar licensed attorney for over a decade, that what would qualify me is a high school diploma. But that's the law. And so we work to change it, and we comply with it until it's changed. Let me make perhaps a little bit of a additional commentary on the importance of record keeping. And this, I cannot stress enough the need to keep the right records. And I stress that because I talk to a fair number of homeschool graduates and moms and dads that have kept some records, but they may not have kept the right records. And here's what I mean. You talk to a homeschool mom, they're really proud of their kids, they're learning all this stuff, they've got boxes of material from starting in kindergarten all the way through let's say the child's in 11th grade, and they're excited for all they're doing and all they're learning as they're growing, and they keep boxes of this information, and all of that's great for nostalgia's sake. But in terms of official record keeping, the fact that your child did this wonderful project in 6th grade doesn't necessarily have legal significance as much as it has emotional significance. And so what I'm going to touch on is not those things that don't have emotional significance. Those are fine, do whatever you want with those, but I'm going to touch on the things that carry legal significance. And let me just share a couple of stories to illustrate some of these points. What are the legally significant documents? Something like the declaration of intent that I just talked about before this is a legally significant document. And we had a case very recently where a mom had kept these records as she had been keeping them. She'd been turning them in to the county as she was directed by law to do so. And there was a major flood in the river where she lived next to. The records were in her basement, and all those records were destroyed. Well, as you can imagine, the school close by also had no records. And so then the question became, well, we don't know that you submitted these notices of intent. We don't know that you submitted the assessments that are required by law at the grades for which they're required. And so we found ourselves at HSLDA defending this mom in circuit court in the state where she lives because they had filed a petition against her because she did not have the records that were legally significant. In that case, it was the notices of intent and the assessments. And so that's a case where, through no fault of her own, she didn't have the records. Um, and the school didn't have the records, so it became a bit of a battle of, well, has she complied with the law or has she not complied with the law? And and so, we got that resolved a few weeks ago. It was resolved outside of courts. We settled the case. The petition was dismissed. That's what we do at HSLDA. But that's a case of just the importance of records, something as basic as the declaration of intent. And again, we may think it's real simple. It's like, well, how much does it really matter? And how long do I have to keep it? Let me ask that question. How long should you keep your declaration of intent or anything that's required to show compliance with the law? I'm not trying to exaggerate when I say you should probably keep that stuff almost forever. Keep a hard copy in a safe place, and there's no reason with our technological age to scan that and keep that in a file, save it to the cloud, wherever you save, your important online stuff. And let me illustrate this with another example. We recently helped, we've actually had a number of these across the states, but I recently assisted a homeschool graduate who was over 40 years old, had a college diploma, and wanted to join, was looking to basically transition careers was the issue. And when they did the recruitment part of this, a lot of companies are going to third-party verifiers, background check companies, and they're just contracting all of the behind-the-scenes stuff to this third-party verification service. And a lot of what they're asking for is, well, do you have your high school diploma? Do you have a copy of your transcript? And again, these are legally significant documents that we ought to do well by our children in both giving them to them and then also maintaining them for a period of time. I've talked to certain homeschool graduates where their parents didn't even bother to give them a proper transcript or give them a proper diploma. And I just think that's kind of sad. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
whether we think it's important or not, or whether, yeah, well, it doesn't really matter. It's a high school diploma. What do they need it for? It's kind of superfluous paperwork. We may think that, but the reality is our children are going to go out into the world. We want them to be productive, good citizens of the society in which they find themselves. And one of the ways that they're able to do that is when they have the documents that our culture kind of expects someone who's 18, 19,
Right.
20-year-olds to have. And that's very simply a transcript and a high school diploma. We've encountered a handful of situations that I've personally been involved with respect to military enlistment. And so the Army and the Navy and the Air Force will often, I recently just dealt with the Marine Corps as well. We have done a good job of trying to educate them on what the laws are for their states so that they're not asking for a bunch of extra stuff. But one of the effects of that is, these recruiters are learning to reference or to learn to get to know what the law is. So if you have someone, for example, who's in Washington and you've got a high school, child who's coming up and they graduate and they want to enlist in the Army or one of the other services, they will know that, okay, well, we know that to be in compliance with the homeschool law, your parent should have filed an annual declaration of intent. And of course, what are they going to ask for? They're going to ask that, can you provide the declaration of intent to demonstrate compliance with the law? And so again, legally significant documents. I've talked to many graduates who, again, it's not maliciousness on the part of their parents, but they missed a year. And now the student, the child, the graduate can't prove compliance with the law because their parent neglected to file a piece of paperwork. Again, should it disqualify them from military service? No, of course it shouldn't. It should be a much more robust look than that. But the reality is they will look and say, well, we can see, because they've gone to HSLDA website also and said, hey, we can see on the website that what's required is these particular things. And then same thing with subject matters. If you've got a subject matter requirement, they can look and see, okay, well, hey, it looks like according to state law, if you wanted to be a homeschool student and do it under the law, you had to teach these particular subjects. And we've noticed that you're missing half of those subjects on your transcript. So you were not in compliance with the law. And again, the question is not whether we think that the state should mandate subjects, or whether Constitution is, valid to be taught, or whether you should have, 3 years of math or 4 years of math. I mean, those types of questions we can answer, and, we can discuss amongst ourselves. But the bottom line is, these are the type of legally significant documents that we have to deal with. And so when you're looking at not just complying with the law, but what type of records I should keep, what you should consider is not the glorious senior thesis that your senior wrote. They spent all this time on it. It's 30 pages long. It's just this beautiful thing. You're very proud of them, and we should be proud of them. But at the end of the day, if you don't keep that thesis, but you do keep the Declaration of Intents, for the last 4 years, that's a win. If you keep the thesis and show the progression of writing from when they were a freshman to when they were a senior, that's well and good. But if you don't have the declarations, it's really not going to serve them well in a meaningful way when those questions are asked of whether their homeschool program was in compliance with the law. And so anyways, hopefully that's helpful. And we do, I am, I really actually am still amazed at some of the questions we get of people who are in their 40s, who are running into issues, who are college educated, who still have to deal with high school diploma and
Yeah,
transcript issues. I mean, I think it's just absurd. It's like, why do I care what the child did in 10th grade when they've got a college diploma? But again, I
right.
think as parents, these are things that, for my kids, I'm like, these are things that I can control for them and help
Hmm.
them navigate. And if you're like me, my parents held on to some of my important documents for a long time until I really got settled and stabilized. And my mom's like, you know what, Kevin, you're a pretty mature guy, but I'm just going to hold on to these for you. And so, so we don't ever lose them. And I think that's what a good parent does. So, anyways, Joy, that's a bit of an
Absolutely.
overview on both the requirements under the law, and then some of the importance of record keeping and what should be kept, and then how we should protect those for the sake of our children.
It's really important. And your mom set you up to know that that was important for your children when you're homeschooling them. So it keeps going. And now they're going to know. And
Yeah.
hopefully that'll go on for generation after generation. I'm
Yeah.
really glad that you touched on a couple of things. I've been helping parents, working with parents for 5 years now, actually over 5 years. And one of the things I learned early on, actually from HSLDA, was follow the law, but don't do more than is required by the law.
Mm,
Because what that does is it sets a precedent. It gives the guys down in Olympia, if you're here in Washington, some ideas.
yeah.
And you're not trying to be sneaky. You're not trying to hedge any of the rules. You're just doing what is required by law. I know a homeschool mom here I live in Kitsap County. And when she gets that kind of pushback, she actually prints up the RCW and submits it with the information that's required and
Mm,
no more.
good
And
idea.
I think
Great idea.
yeah, it's a great idea. And she offers to have conversations. She's not being difficult. She just
Yeah.
wants to do what's required. I think too, so where what I just want to recap a little bit. What I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, is know your state laws, know what's required of you as the parent.
Yes.
um, Keep good records. It's extremely important.
Hmm.
And then hanging on to those records. I mean, till they're adults even. It sounds like you've worked with a lot of people that this has actually come up in question. And that never even dawned on me. I still have all the records from the year that I homeschooled my daughter. And I wanted to just add, I was looking for a diploma. I wanted it to feel as much like the experience that she'd kind of imagined that her
Mm,
senior year would be like.
yeah.
I found all sorts of free resources for homeschool parents. Etsy
Mm,
has some great resources to
yeah.
print up these beautiful diplomas,
Yeah.
free grade books that you can actually customize a transcript. So she had her public school transcripts and her homeschool transcript and was ready to go when she applied to her vet tech program.
Yeah, and let me just
So
let me just add on to that, Joy, because I think that's a great point. There's
mhm,
I mean, there's just tons of resources. I mean, there's no reason
tons.
not to get a quality product. And frankly, on the flip side of that, I have seen some diplomas and transcripts, and
Mhm.
I just ask yourself when you're creating this as a parent, like, if I were to submit this to someone or they were to give it to me as a high school diploma, would it raise
Right.
questions or would it put questions to rest?
Oh,
And,
that's a really good
I mean,
litmus test.
sometimes I get, because one of the, people call us and they say, hey, we want your help in verifying that we are in compliance with the law. We ask them to, okay, well, send us your declaration of intent, send us your transcript, send us whatever
Mhm.
the stuff was. And it's not very common, but every now and then, we'll get a transcript or something. And um, it just doesn't have quality written on it, if
Yeah.
you know what I mean. And I
Yeah.
go, you know, don't give an employer or a college admissions office a reason to question it any more than they
Right.
might already, simply because it's already atypical. And same thing, something as silly as naming your homeschool.
Yeah.
I mean, just think
Yeah.
about, again, you might think it's really cute, and maybe it's really cute when the when the kids are, in first, third, and fifth grade, but when the kid graduates and this is written on their diploma,
Mhm.
what will that communicate to the world that's going to receive it? And so, yeah, I
Great
mean, you
point.
mentioned some free resources, but just make this a
Yeah.
quality professional product, again, for the benefit of your child, so that they can be as successful as possible and not be hamstrung a little bit simply because you've got a handwritten transcript that doesn't make any sense, that someone is
Right.
going to immediately question. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a great point. With use the resources you got. It's not expensive. You just
No,
have to put some
it
time
doesn't
into
have
it.
to be.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, and reaching out to HSLDA or, reach out to other homeschool parents. They have tons of things that they can share with you, resources to send you. Check out this website. This is, was recommended to me by the co-op or whatever. And again,
Yep.
check for quality. I think that's a great point that you made, Kevin. Um, I would love for you to share a little bit, and it can be very brief because I'm sure it's actually a big answer to this question. Um, how can HSLDA help homeschool families and support them? What kind of services and whatnot do you all offer at HSLDA?
Well, I mean, I'll lead with the kind of the main topic of our evening here, which is I mean, the reality is sadly, I mean, homeschool discrimination is still alive and well, and
Mhm.
there's still lots of barriers that we have to kind of work down. It's not the, oh, it's outright prohibited by law, and we can't do it. It's these other issues that we have to face.
Right.
And so one of the things that we do is help just constantly tear down some of those barriers. And I talk to a lot of moms and dad that are surprised they have to deal with it. A mom who says, you
Mm,
know what, I've graduated 6 kids already, and now I'm on my sixth kid. They're getting ready to go, and they're running into problems. And they call us and
yeah.
say, I've been member for 10 years. I've never had to call you guys, and I can't believe on my last one, um, I've got to resolve these issues. So along those lines, we have, for members only, we have a lot of information for free on our site. We want it publicly available, but we do have some member only resources from the legal perspective.
Mm,
Um, where you can find your notices of intent. And I think it's particularly important in a very mobile society. People move around frequently, they go to new states. So you can get all of that for free on our site, which I think is great. And we
yeah.
do advocate, in the legislatures when they're in session. And so we do pay attention, we do monitor legislation. In Washington, for example, as you and perhaps many of your audience knows, I mean, there's a nearly constant attempt to lower the compulsory attendance age in
Mhm.
Washington. So we're very vigilant in working with the organizations there, the state organizations, on pushing back against that. And so on those types of issues for members, we'll send out e-alerts. We'll say, hey, this is going on. Here's the members of, I don't know, the Senate Education Committee. Please call them, tell them to vote no. I've personally testified and provided written testimony in Washington
Mhm.
against some of this legislation. On the practical side, we do have some educational resources. We do have some stuff behind a paywall, a multi-part series on how to create a transcript, on how to craft a 4-year plan for your high schooler.
Oh, that's great.
Because we found that there's a lot of moms and dads are really comfortable in the elementary school year as they get a little squirrely in middle school. And then by the time they hit ninth grade, like the ball kind of drops and they're like, okay, like
Yeah.
it really matters now. I can't mess this up. And so we try to encourage families and say that you can do it. Um, And so those are some of the things that we do. I mean, we are
Mhm.
just a 40-year-old, 40-plus-year-old national, the only nationally dedicated organizations exclusively to homeschool freedom and rights. And so I love what I do. The only pitch I'll get is you have the freedom to homeschool if you're listening to this. And what I want to see is when my kids grow up, and if they choose to homeschool, I want them to live in a world in which homeschooling is more free for them than it is for me. And so at HSLDA, we labor to bring that into fruition and to make that a reality for my kids and my grandkids. So that's what we're about. We're membership driven. If you want to partner with us, check it out. Check us out at hslda.org/join. But I think it's wonderful. And the other thing, of course, is we get a chance to work with organizations like yours. I mean, there's lots of organizations focused on these important issues. And so one of the blessings that I have as an attorney there is being able to partner with. And when there's good legislation, rally the troops, let's support it, let's get the word out, let's encourage the
Right.
elected officials to vote for it. And when there's negative legislation that we think is a threat to freedom, rally folks and say, hey, this is a threat to your liberty. If you want your kids to have freedom, then show up, make the phone call, send the email, show up to testify. Um, I know, the organization, right? Conservative Ladies. I mean, as you guys know, people have power. I mean, the
Absolutely.
republic we live in, I don't have power in Washington. I mean, I happen to be from there. I've been to Kitsap County. I grew up in
Hmm.
Washington. I went to school in Bellevue. I know all of, drove back and forth across Lake Washington, went to the old spaghetti factory, all this stuff in downtown Seattle. Um, but the power is not with me as an attorney who works in Virginia and has lived there. The power is
Hmm.
with the moms and the dads who will show up and take action. And so I just can't stress that enough, that this is not we try to lead and be eyes and ears and pay attention and mobilize folks and look at trends across the 50 states. But when it comes time to show up in Olympia or make a phone call, Joy, as you know,
Yeah.
it's the people that have to do that or there's no effect. So
I
that's why I love talking to people.
I wish you would say that louder for everybody in the back, the back.
Yeah,
It's so
yeah.
true. I know I say this a lot. Our team says this a lot. A lot of people like to wait for the government, but the power is with the people. And
Hmm.
what we notice here in Washington and what we have heard from other people around the nation is people who are opposed to good things show up in droves.
Hmm.
The people who want the good things kind of peter in or they don't show up,
Yeah.
and our voices are so powerful. I had a situation this last year because of a testimony that I made, not this last session, but the session before here in Washington. I was contacted by people to make public comment because
Mm.
that it was powerful. My voice did that. It's not, yes, I'm part of what I think is one of the best organizations, being part of CLA, but it's because I used my voice. I am a citizen, and it matters that we show up. And I will tell everyone who's watching, I signed up for email alerts from HSLDA, and I also attended the live stream that you all did with the updates from across the nation with
Oh,
different
good.
legislation.
Yeah.
You all were busier than a cat in a room full of rocking chairs.
Oh,
You
this.
all were everywhere, and I can tell you the success stories happened because moms and dads and families showed up in huge numbers
Yeah.
to celebrate the good stuff, but also to fight the things that were going to infringe on that. And before
Yeah.
we get too far, we have a question that I want to ask you. Could you address what record transition might look like for a new homeschool parent of a high schooler who is going to go from public ed to homeschooling? How can a parent make that as seamless as possible? Do you have any hot tips for us?
Yeah, I do have some tips, and actually, I'll
Great.
take the liberty of addressing the reverse too. Sometimes
Yeah,
we have
great.
homeschoolers that want to put their kid back in public school for the last couple years, or have a high school
Mhm.
senior year, or whatever the case may be. Um, yeah, I mean, the way to make it, I don't know that there's a way to make it seamless, Joy. as a
Yeah,
as a homeschool parent, I mean,
seamless.
there's ways to make it more seamless and less seamless. One of the
Right.
first things, of course, is what we discussed this morning. I mean, just know the law. I mean, don't be surprised when you get to September after you've planned the year that oh, there's a subject matter that I didn't even know that was required by law, and now
Mm-hmm.
you're backtracking. Um, but when you make that transition, there's a couple things to keep in mind, right? You'll issue the diploma, and the diploma is issued from one institution. So, and I'm just, again, take your homeschool hat off and just put your public school hat on. What
Right.
happens there? If you're going to transfer from, where I grew up, Bothell High School to Woodinville High School in Western Washington, then Woodinville High School would accept the credits from Bothell High School. Woodinville High School would then issue the diploma based on the credits that are earned over the entirety of that 4-year period, even though
Mm-hmm.
that particular high school didn't do all the teaching for all 4 years. And so when you're thinking about that from a homeschool perspective, it's no different. You are saying, hey, they went to public school for, let's just say, ninth and 10th grade. They've transitioned to a different educational institution, which is my home, and I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to give you all of those, give you credits for all of those things that are earned. Um,
Right.
Let me adjust just a couple things, because again, people call us when there's nuance, right? When there's chat. If everything's hunky dory, then oftentimes people don't call. But
Right.
we've had situations where so one of the ways that I'll answer this is know what that public school is going to do. I mean, are they going to have an official transcript for the couple years that they were there?
Mm.
Because you can't have a disconnect between the two. I've actually seen cases where the parent has issued a different grade than the public school gave them. And now there's a disconnect. Mom says, hey, I think they earned an A minus. And the school says, well, they got a B minus. And it may be that totally legitimate, right? It may be that the mom knows the kid did all the work and the school didn't accept it because they were 24 hours late on 6 assignments, and the mom just doesn't
Right.
think that's a big deal and knows that they're very competent and know the subject matter. So it's not even that it's nefarious, but
Mm-hmm.
again, those things can raise questions, because if you're going further and you have to submit all your transcripts and you say, okay, I went to whatever high school for ninth and 10th, and they go and try to get a copy of those records and there's a disconnect, that can be a problem. Um, so
Right.
I would just, and I'd reiterate, one thing that you said, because the most stressful part of this is, yes, we can deal with the declarations of intent, the legal aspects of it, but the most stressful part is not really going to be that stuff. It's just, what do I do? And that's where, look at your homeschool community, talk to anyone that you know, homeschool moms that have done it for a little bit. I mean, my
Right.
experience has been they love to help other moms and dads with starting that journey. And so
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to do all this discovery learning and figure it out. You can just say, hey, we're making this switch. The child's not doing well, whatever the reason is, we want to switch to go home. I just had this conversation with a mom literally probably 6 hours ago this afternoon.
Yeah.
Um, just attach yourself with somebody, get to know it's a tight knit community. And then let me just address the reverse, because every now and then it happens. They want to
Mm-hmm.
put a kid back in public school. Um, just like you would not have to accept credits from a different institution, the public school often cannot or does not want to, nor will they accept a high school, accept credits from your homeschool. So, um, and there's nothing that requires them to do so, because when they give that diploma, what they're saying with their diploma from the public high school is the
Mm-hmm.
child has met the graduation requirements of, let's say, 45 credits. And if
Okay.
the public school only taught them for 10 of those in the last year, or 15 of those, they're basically vouching for everything that the parent taught. And the most common way that they come to solve this is to require the student to complete the final exam of every course that they were not taught at that institution. So all the finals for ninth grade, all the finals for 10th grade, all the finals for 11th grade, in order to give them credit. Again, I think it's absurd, but there's nothing in the law that I can point to that says, hey, that's unlawful for you to do so.
Right.
We can point to, maybe if the kid took the PSAT or has
Mm-hmm.
taken these standardized tests, or maybe they can take a standardized test and say, look, the kid got a 1350 on the PSAT in 10th grade. I mean, and you're telling me you think that they have to redo, take final exams. It's just kind of silly, but those are just
Yeah.
practical arguments, not necessarily a legal argument that I can can stand on. So again, just keep that in mind as you're moving into the high school years. Be very cognizant that switching from homeschool to the public school can be a challenge. Not always, but
Yeah.
and
I could
you've got to
certainly
be
see it
aware.
being a challenge here in Washington. If you
Yeah,
don't mind, I'll share what I did to because I was very worried about making sure that my daughter that we could account for the required,
yeah,
credits in Washington State. Most state websites for your superintendent or your overall, Department of Education for your state, they hold a page where you can go and look to see what every senior must have, or high schooler needs to have completed.
yeah,
What we did is I had my daughter, we use Skyward in the district that she was in to, for attendance and payments and transcripts and stuff. She went in and she printed out a student copy of the credits that she had completed and what still needed to be completed.
mm-hmm.
And then that helped me plan our senior year. She actually asked to repeat a few things because it was during the COVID era. She felt like
Mm.
US history was really very rushed for her.
Yeah,
But that really helped me, and then I felt like I had, a good framework to show people if they ask questions, "Well, this is what I went off of."
yeah,
So, that was a great jumping off point, so if you're looking for that, that's a free and easy tool that
yeah.
you can access before your children no longer have access to their Skyward. So, you
Mm.
can make that plan or even ask the counseling department. I think that they would hopefully, unless they're upset that you're pulling your child,
Yeah,
hopefully, they will give you that. And if they won't, you can always go to the state website and find out what those requirements are.
yeah,
Those are really good points. I'd never actually thought about the converse, the flip side of that, returning back to. And I know, having been a military family myself, I know a lot of people who homeschool that were military. And sometimes decisions were made based on homeschool law in the state that they were PCSing
absolutely.
to, that they were
Yep.
moving to. And if it was really awful, sometimes they chose to go, private school, public school. They had a different, choice that they wanted to make.
Mm.
But that's really important. And also, I want to put a little plug because military families are near and dear to me.
Mhm.
HSLDA has a whole area that they can help with that, and I'm really impressed. When I just went and I played on your website one night, I just wanted to see what you had in case someone asked me, because I don't get anything. I recommend you because I think you're a great resource. You've been a great
Thank you.
resource to me,
Thank you.
and I know that it's a great resource for us with CLA. That there's a whole, like, tab I can click if I'm a military family, and there's resources, and there's
Yeah.
worldwide resources. So, it's important that we have this, and I would encourage anyone who's thinking about, especially if you're brand new and you haven't gotten your feet wet, a membership with HSLDA to me is a great little bit of insurance. If you have questions, if people start threatening you from a school district, and we have had parents get threatened across the nation,
Yeah.
you could call and say, "This is what they're saying to me. Is this right?" And you can help them through that. And that's very reassuring as a mom or a dad who already feels the pressure of, am I going to do this right?
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I love that we have this resource. It's a great resource for everybody.
Well, I appreciate that, Joy. I mean, we
Of
try
course.
hard to see see what's coming and, be that resource. I, of course, to get to the military point, I mean, I love helping, you know, folks that are in the military, moving around, figuring out what's going on. I love, helping kids who are facing challenges getting into the military
Mhm.
with overcoming those. You know, I mean, I can tell you, we have the Army and the Navy are regularly appear at homeschool conventions to recruit homeschool, kids because they really are, they do very well in the military. So
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about helping them when the issue comes. And the other thing is there's homeschooling, people come in and out of it is the reality of it. There's
Mhm.
a small group of people that do it K through 12. Most of the community comes in and out of it at various times. You move around, even maybe not with the military, but you move to a place and suddenly, you know, in West Virginia, for example, a homeschool child can play on the public school sports team.
Right.
Well, if my job required me to move to a state where I couldn't do that, and this was something that my child was doing, and we thought it was a quality school that wasn't, not in conflict with the moral values that we held, Um, you know, you could understand why a family who maybe didn't plan for that to happen would find themselves in a position. And so, you know, keep these things in mind. To your point about minimum graduation requirements, every state has them at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Look at your state law and say,
Yep.
okay, if they were to go to a public school, what would they do? What would they, you know, what are the requirements to graduate? And then that the
Yeah.
worksheet you reference is just wonderful. So you can speak intelligently in the language that the public school officials understand. And
Right.
so
Well,
this
just like
is,
you are able to speak the language of the military. It's alphabet soup. It's
yeah,
acronym after acronym.
yeah,
I
yeah,
had to learn that real quick as an ombudsman when I served as a Navy family ombudsman. It's
yeah.
and half the time I was asking my husband for a translation.
Well, and it's,
What's
you know,
that
and
again?
and some of it with the military, as you know, you can get some credibility. You know, I can say,
Yeah.
hey, look, I
Yeah.
was at 10 years active duty. I'm a judge advocate. I serve in the reserve capacity. I've advised lots of
Yep.
wing commanders and admirals, and you know, the community is small enough, as you know, that you can develop some instant credibility just by saying, I've been in that community full time. I'm in that community part time, and you know,
Right.
create some synergy with the recruiter, whoever that is. And so, and generally
That's
people,
awesome.
they want to get to the right answer. And,
Yeah.
you know, so just if you're a homeschool family and you're encountering some resistance, most of the people want to get to the right answer. There are a few, of course, people that are just kind of mean and nasty, and we deal with them as we have to. But
Yeah.
you know, by and large, we don't have to go guns blazing. And I just say real simply, hey, you got a great applicant here who wants to enlist, who wants to serve his country. What can we do to break down some of these barriers that are put in front of them? I
Right.
mean, the poor kid just
That's
wants to serve. Let's
yeah.
figure this out
Uh,
together so we can have a good person in the army. It's not that hard, and
Absolutely.
the recruiter wants to get there. And so,
Well, of course. I mean, when you recruit good people, it makes them look good too,
yeah,
you know?
right.
So, a quick question actually that popped up for me, as you were talking about, like in Washington, our kids are able to access certain, programs, even
Hmm.
some classes, on campus. What are there protections? Do we have to worry about as homeschool parents? Like, let's say that Washington all of a sudden required a certain vaccine, for example, but that's not
Hmm.
something that we require in homeschool or that we want our children to have. Um, are we able to get those exemptions? Is that something HSLDA could help with, or is that outside your scope? Or have you seen this happen?
Yeah, we have seen it. In fact, I have a case right now that I'm working on. It's a bit nuanced. The question is, what is the requirement? Generally, if you're going to step into that space, right?
Hmm.
Just like you would for a sports team. Hey, you want to play on this travel baseball team, then we require X, Y, or Z. Or you want to come to the dojang and do taekwondo or karate, you know, you've got to
Right.
um, these are the requirements we have. So what we can't say is, hey, this is the vaccine requirements that's imposed on all students who want to attend here, whether it's a private school student who wants to play on the baseball team because they don't
Hmm.
have one, or a homeschool student or a public school student. We won't say, well, you can't enforce that on a homeschool family, because generally the law says that they can't. The
Right. Okay.
question is when it's a discrimination type issue or there's some other law at play. And so some states have religious exemptions where you can
Hmm.
apply for a religious exemption, and maybe you've got a district that doesn't want to accept that a homeschooler has gotten that and
Yeah.
is going to the school. Um, Another kind of interesting issue that some families encounter and some don't, but JROTC is a federally funded issue. So, what's the
Oh.
implication of the federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act, RFRA? And does that have any bearing for a family that has is looking for a religious accommodation under federal
Hmm.
law for an activity that is funded federally but takes place at the local public school? So you can see how some of these issues get kind of nuanced. So
Very.
what I
Yeah.
tell folks is, hey, if you have a question, let us know. If it's outside the scope of what we do, um, because again, you may not like it as a homeschool family, but it does not necessarily mean that you're being discriminated because you're homeschooling. It's just a
Right.
requirement. And it's like anything else in, you know, most thing else, other things in our country. You don't have to participate. If you want to do this, you've got to comply. It's kind of like, if you want to drive the car, then you got to get it registered and insured. I mean, that's just
Right.
a
Get a
generally applicable law.
license.
You don't have to like it.
Yeah.
You don't have to care. You can scream, kick and scream, but the reality is it's a uniformly put. And if there's an exemption that someone could apply for, maybe the state gives it, maybe they don't. But so
Right.
that's really the question we ask is, does it look like this is a discrimination because they're homeschooling, or is this a generally applicable law that says,
Mhm.
hey, any student needs to have these things? And we've dealt
Yeah.
with this. I mean,
I'm
you've got
sure
to
you
probably
have.
give you've probably got to give more records than you would otherwise want to give the public school, and you can't say, well, I don't want to have to give them the birth certificate, or I don't want them to get a state issued ID number because we're not enrolled there. It's like, well, you know your kid's going to go there, they're going to play on their field, they're going to be under the supervision of a coach. And so
Right.
it's not unreasonable for the school to say, we need some kind of oversight. We need to know who the emergency contacts are. I mean, we get a lot of
Yeah.
parents who, rightly so, they're a little worried about giving
I
additional
get it.
information. And our position is basically, if you're going to step over that line, you're going to give up some of those liberties that you have as a homeschool family because you're choosing to step over that line. And
That's a good point. Yeah.
so
Well, and
again,
there are community, clubs and different things, and this is again, I would say, ask those homeschool families, what are you guys
mhm,
doing? Do you play on a club sport team that your child is involved with? Because that way they learn and they can plug in and make those
yeah,
connections with those places. And they're going, like you said, those club sports are going to have their own rules too, but
mhm,
maybe it's a little bit more in line with what you're okay with as a parent.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
and that is something, that um I also try to I like how you said you don't always have to go in guns blazing. When we're passionate about things, it's easy to do. And when it
Yep,
comes to our kids, especially. Um, but I think the more we understand, the more information that we have, the better we're going to go into a situation. And like you said, most people, they really want to come to a good understanding and a good resolution. Now and again, you're going to get some people who are just mean. They didn't have their coffee this morning or something.
yeah,
Um, and or maybe they have a bee in their bonnet about homeschoolers. That does happen now and again, but
yeah.
it's few and far between on those people.
Well, and the
And
other thing is, Joy, along those lines is superintendents come and go too. I mean, a
oh
lot of
yeah,
times I'll talk to them and I'll call them and they'll be like, "Oh, I didn't know that that was the case." I mean, literally,
yeah.
they don't know. They came into the job, they're
Well,
focused on other issues. They get this one homeschool issue, they don't know the law, they make a judgment call, and all they need to be told is, "Yeah, the law doesn't allow that." And they go, "Oh, okay." And they move on.
yeah,
So,
yeah. The other thing is that, at least I've encountered this. I've also had superintendents who try to pretend like the law doesn't exist.
yes.
But it's
Yeah.
there not just for our protection as
Mm,
parents, but it's there in a way to protect the school district as well. Like, so that they are able to tell a registrar, the district office
yeah.
can tell a parent, yes, this is the letter that we need you to fill out. Or they know to go to HSLDA and get a copy, or any, good, reputable
Yeah.
homeschool resource that can do that. It's important. So,
Yep.
Kevin, I want to start to wrap up because I know it's late for you. And I appreciate you taking time out of your evening to be with
Yes, I'm
us,
happy
for those
to.
of us
It's a
on the
pleasure.
West Coast. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you with us. I want to thank you for all of the information that you have shared tonight. If people want to reach out to you or reach you in any way, how can they do that?
Yeah, I would invite them to go. You can, if you just have general information, go to hslda.org, go to our site. The
Okay,
other way to email us if you have a question is just to put the name of your state at hslda.org. So you can just email Washington at hslda.org, and that will come to me and my team. We'd be happy to answer those questions. Or if you live in
that's
Idaho
great.
or Oregon at HSLDA. So
Right.
we try to make it very simple. We've got a number of attorneys. I cover 9 states. We've got 7 other attorneys that handle the other states. So we're a full service operation. We'd invite you to partner with us. And I just want to encourage people, just get engaged too. I mean, really, just the
Yeah.
fact that you're on this call is a great first step. There are times when it requires more than just listening and gaining information. It requires a proactive step. And so in those
Yep.
moments, don't be the mom or dad that says, oh, that someone else will do that. Somebody else will make the phone call. It's incumbent on us all to say, you know what, I'm going to make the phone call and I'm going to text my circle of influence and encourage them to do the same. So I know your
So
wonderful organization
important.
is on it, but be a part of
Yeah.
the solution and the change agent, and don't lean on other people to do the job that I think we should do as parents. So
That's why I got involved. I kept saying someone should do something. And one day I looked at myself and I said, Joy, you're someone.
yes, that's so
Because I
true.
am.
So true.
And you can lean on organizations like Conservative Ladies of America if you need help writing an email, crafting an email, or what should I say in this phone call? Or, I've helped some people. They're that charged parent behind the phone and they are ready to go in, and you can kind of talk them off the ledge a little
Yeah.
bit and get them to focus on the facts and not the feelings. The feelings are always there. We're mom and dad.
Yep.
That's important that we have that, but you can turn that into something productive that can hopefully make meaningful change. Showing up is where it's at. We can't sit on the bench, like you said, and wait for someone else to do it. So,
Absolutely. 100%.
thank you again for joining us. And I want to invite everyone to join us next month on the fourth Wednesday of the month. Our next guest is going to be Jennifer Child. She is a homeschool mom. She's going to share how she's made that work for her. She's also one of our founding members of when we were CLW, just the Washington State organization. Hearing from parents doing the real thing makes it feel like you can do it rather than this idea out there somewhere that sounds good. It's nice to hear when other parents say, I had a bad day today. Homeschooling did not happen. It was a pajama day. It happens. So thank you all for joining us tonight. And thank you again, Kevin. We will see you on the next Parent Power Hour in September. Have a good evening.